Hello, Telekios here. Life sucks, and I've been dealing with a lot recently. Actually, I've been dealing with a lot my entire life, but recently I've been dealing with specific problems that I've had my whole life. I am trying to get an official diagnosis for everything that is actually wrong with me. So far, I have guessed correctly all the mental disorders that I do have. I am extremely self aware. This is something that my current therapist and I have discussed in within length. I kind of have proven it to him through the many conversations and the light banter that we have shared together. My ED is one of those specific moments of proof that I have an extreme amount of self awareness. I was discussing to him my relationship, or lack thereof, with food, and he doesn't really specialize in that stuff, so he hooked me up with a clinic that does. And at the end of it, and I just asked him, like, what exactly do you think is wrong with me if these are the things that I have and the issues that I have? And he said a diagnosis, and I finished his diagnosis by saying, "You mean type 2?" And that was one of the moments that he realized that I'm actually self aware. I also told him that I have read dictionaries, thesauruses, and the DSM. I have explained through banter, of course, professional banter, of what's going on with my mind, what I've been through, the reason why I haven't really found a therapist that clicks, and all that fun stuff. So he kind of realized that I'm a lot of things delusional and ignorant of my perception of myself is not one of them. He kind of was surprised, but not entirely, when I told him, like, type 2, you mean? Because at this point, I have told him that I read multiple dictionaries, the sources, and the DSM. He kind of realized at this point that I am extremely self aware with this and other conversations that we have shared. I told my current therapist for him to talk to my previous therapist because she dealt with a previous persona of mine. I have this thing that I call an extreme amount of self awareness, and it is extreme amount of self awareness. I am so self aware, in fact, that when I switch languages, I am aware that my personality switches with my languages. This is supposed to be happening on a subconscious level, but I am again very much aware that it does happen. And it just doesn't happen with language changes, it also happens when I change accents, and it also happens between the same language, so I don't think this is the subconscious, your personality changes based on the language that you're speaking. I started noticing that this happens when I started learning my third and fourth languages. I told my previous therapist I think I have something like DID, dissociative identity disorder. Keyword like, as in similar, comparable to, akin to, not like as in the same or exact. She, of course, did not believe me because it's like every therapist knows that I lie, even about my 5 names and how many languages I speak until I started speaking her. I started speaking to her those 5 different languages, and then they kind of realized that I'm not entirely lying, but it kind of didn't work out. That's the short end. So I told my current therapist, yo, my guy, could you please talk to my previous therapist lady so that, like, y'all can kind of figure out what's wrong with me, what's going on with me, because I already know what's wrong with me, I already know what's going on with me, but because I have something called self-awareness, and I am aware that as a human I have biases, and I, of course, see the world through an egocentric view, my view, of things. And I am aware that maybe I could be wrong. That's a possibility. So I don't want to necessarily self-diagnose with a mental disorder that I don't have, especially because I know what I have and don't have. And so that's kind of just messy at best. Now I will tell you what I told my therapist. I am extremely self-aware. I can turn off empathy. I know who I am. I disassociate and depersonalize myself from myself. And I personally do not want to diagnose, even though I know exactly what's wrong with me. I don't want to self-diagnose because I'm aware that as a human I have an egocentric view, and as a human I have biases towards myself. Whether that bias is good or bad is dependent on the subject. I also don't have doctrines, so I cannot, in psychology, so I cannot and should not, even if I did have a doctrines, I should not be self-diagnosing. I am now waiting for my current therapist to talk to my previous therapist so they kind of can figure out what is actually wrong with me, and by what I mean when I say my personality changes. I guess I'm too cute and too attractive to be self-aware and smart. But others know who I am, not myself. They do, but I don't. I don't like her at all. I do not like that version of myself. In fact, I hate her. I despise her. I don't recognize her. And it's weird because I know that I'm talking about myself. I would say this version of myself is a truer version of myself. However, I would have said the same exact thing to the previous 3 versions of myself that I have been in the span of like 2-3 years. I am very self-aware when the changes happen, and so for me to be this self-aware but somehow not know what's wrong with me is at this point in my life comical, in a sad sort of tragedy kind of way. It's a comical tragedy. That's what it is. Right now I am hoping that I get a diagnosis on something that actually makes sense, and I'm also aware of that pesky bias, so I know for a fact that I might have a mental disorder or two that I don't necessarily have to like to be having that diagnosis or to be diagnosed with that. For example, I have PTSD. This is a diagnosis that I've had for a long time now, and I don't have to like this diagnosis to look at the DSM and look at it subjectively and see that I have pretty much all of the criteria. I actually think I have all the criteria. Even though I might not have PTSD, I might have CPTSD. But again, that's the criteria that matches right now. That's the criteria that's available on both the DSM-5 and the DSM-5 updated version. So that's kind of what I have, and that's what I accept me as having. I also don't have to like the diagnosis of having depression, major depression, for me to accept having major depression, with the exception that it has been more than 4 years, so it no longer is depression or major depression. It now is under the dysthymia category, just because of time alone. Either way, I am aware. I don't have to like it to be accepting of that diagnosis and understanding of why someone came up with that or those diagnoses. I right now know what's wrong with me, but I don't want to self-diagnose because, again, I'm aware that humans have biases. I am aware that basically I don't have to necessarily like or dislike a diagnosis to understand that if I fit the criteria, if the shoe fits, I'm going to wear it, as to say. I've been trying really hard to maintain a healthy. Still happy that I lost my job, no longer being called Hispanic, no longer having to wear an adult diaper, and I'm really happy about not being told certain things, like someone knows me better than I know myself, which I know myself pretty well. Gonna try to keep making some videos, even if it's more this style vloggy talky type. Try to not talk it out, but try to get my thoughts onto video so I can document maybe some of those changes. And I'm not just talking about my accents or my languages, I'm talking about the actual changes within my personality or persona. I'm really trying, and for once in a really long time, I feel like I'm actually able to do the things that I've wanted to do. I'm actually able to face my mental shortcomings, if we're gonna say that. I'm not gonna lie, I am kind of scared because I know what's wrong with me and I don't necessarily want to fully accept it. Like, I accept it, but I don't fully accept it. I have a lot on my mind, and I'm trying, still trying. Never give up. I guess that's... Even though I've tried to give up. For good. Anyways, it's been Tilly Kills here. Peace. Bye. Oh!